The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. There are some instructions here as you settle in. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody in just a few minutes, and then just want to make sure that you're able to mute yourself when you are not speaking. We'll get started in about 5 minutes. We'll get started in about 1 more minute, and then I will go ahead and unmute everybody so that way you can mute yourselves. So this way you have full control over when you're able to speak and have a question. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to unmute everybody. So just be sure that you go ahead and mute yourself. That way, there isn't too much interference. And it looks like it's still giving me some trouble. I'm going to try one more time. And I'm somehow still unable to mute all of you all. I'm very sorry. It must be a settings issue. So we'll just sort of do this the way that we did before in the last couple of office hours. If you have a question, you have a raise hand feature. So I'll go over that shortly, but just want to introduce myself before we fully get started. I am Natalie Flores, and I am joined by Mary Allen today. Mary, do you want to say hi? I think you
Hello.
There you are.
Yes. We can all put that on our bingo card. You were muted.
Exactly. Thank you. All right. So like we said, as you settle in, feel free to add your name, your role. If you'd like, you can also mention your question in the chat box, but really this is a place for us to just hear each other out in terms of what questions we have. So the best way to do that we have found out, since I somehow cannot unmute you all, is that you raise your hand. And this is what the raise hand feature looks like. So you have your control panel, is what we're calling it, on the right-hand side. And there's essentially three features that you have. You have the mute, which is that circle with the microphone in it. When it's red, it means we cannot hear you. But the best way to ask your question is to raise your hand, and then I go in and unmute you. So again, that's just the best way to do it that we have found so far. But again, if you don't feel like sharing your question by using your voice, you're welcome to put it in the questions chat box as well. And so just a reminder for those who are new to us that we do have some norms and expectations, and they're quite simple. This is an office hours, meaning that it's essentially an open door policy for any questions that you might have. So this is not a formal training in any way. It is just a way for you to ask your question, to have real live dialogue with some of the support staff at TA, and for today, that is me and Mary. So let's go ahead and get started. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to check right now to see who has their hand up, and we will go in that order. So let's see. All right, it looks like Lori has a question. So Lori, I'm going to unmute you, and then you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Oh, and I'm looking at Lori Longoria in case there are two Loris in here. Hi, Lori.
Thank you, Natalie. Hi. Hi, Alan, as well. Mike, I'm from the School of Science and Technology, which is a charter school here in Texas. And I was wondering, because I'm going back and forth with our special education coordinator and dyslexia coordinator about the dyslexia screener for our first graders entering. From my understanding of what I read, based on the waiver that was issued, is that it doesn't have to be a full screener for our first graders. It's just the reading diagnostic tool. Is that correct?
That is correct. Mary, do you want to answer this one?
Sure. This is the normal literacy that you give at the beginning of the year in order to gather information so you can determine what action you're going to take and enter that action into the early reading indicator code that is due on December 3rd, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to follow that up, we're using MClass for the first time as our reading diagnostic tool. And as you all know, there's certain measures within that assessment. Do you by any chance know what exact measures need to be given to our students to meet that requirement?
I believe you give the whole MClass. It does not take long. It's pretty quick. I think it takes 5 to 7 minutes per student to give the entire first grade assessment and second grade assessment. And
okay, so I apologize. You're mentioning just those 8. So that's not that, in conjunction with spelling and listening comprehension, suffices the complete dyslexia screener. But since we're not doing a full dyslexia screener, we can only just we are able to administer just the DIBELS 8 portion.
Right.
Perfect. Okay, because I guess the issue I'm having is giving the spelling and the listening comprehension remotely is going to be very difficult for first graders and for our teachers. And so administering the DIBELS 8 portion of it is not as difficult as would be the other measures.
Right. Now you'll have to give the dyslexia screener by January 31st to all first graders. And then you don't give it to second graders unless you have concerns.
Perfect. And if my special education or 504 dyslexia coordinator had any, or I guess wanted to seek clarification on this, where could I direct her to read that information?
Do you want to go ahead and tell her, Natalie? Do you want to take this one?
Sure, yeah. So if you have any questions essentially related to anything in early childhood, our inbox is really the best place to go. And I just put that up on the screen so you guys could see. It's early childhood education at tea.texas.gov. So I would recommend going in there. Mary and I both support that inbox. And when there's a time when someone may not know the answer to your question, they usually send it to us. So the first place to go is definitely the early childhood education inbox. Yeah, and then we can sort of see if it needs to be escalated to anyone else from there.
Perfect.
Well, and I would also have them check out the data-driven webpage that Natalie put on there, because that has all of the, it does have all of these answers on there. And there's 3 buttons. The first one is requirements. The second one is tool selection, which digs deep into each tool, and best practice and professional development.
Great. And I think the confusion may have come from the handbook states, the dyslexia handbook states something very different from what's happening now, but that's because of this current situation, correct?
Correct.
The COVID-19, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, Natalie, there's a question that says they're not seeing your screen.
Oh no, let me double check and make sure. Sorry about that, everybody. You should be able to see
There
it now.
is.
All right, sorry about that.
And there's another question. Our biggest issue is with CLI and the response time to districts.
Okay, so, well, I just want to make sure, Lori, was your question answered?
It was, yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Okay, so you can go ahead and mute yourself, and then let's get to that question that Mary brought up, which is that it's taking a little while maybe to hear from CLI Engage. So what I recommend is that if it's taking a long time to hear back from them, I mean, like, over a week or so, to get access into your accounts or to get your school set up in any way, again, email us at Early Childhood Education, and we will be able to sort of send it and escalate it to whichever personnel may need to hear from you at that point. So, but do make sure that the first thing you do is submit a help desk ticket. If you're encountering any issues at all, the best first place to go is to that CLI Engage help desk ticket. If then you are not hearing back from them and it's been quite a considerable amount of time, please email us at Early Childhood Education and give over that information for us. Let us know, hello, I submitted a help desk ticket 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago. I have yet to hear back. That way we know kind of how to escalate that better for you.
Lacey Bracher, I may have mispronounced that, I'm sorry. She put in a comment that sometimes CLI emails go to your junk or spam folder, so be sure to check there if you haven't heard from them.
Good
and I
point.
have had that as well.
Yep,
Yeah.
that I have experienced that personally, and I have heard that from the field. So do make sure that you check your spam, or make sure they're on the safe senders list as well. Okay, so let's see if anything new has popped in. Okay, so no other hands are raised right now. And unfortunately, we won't know if you have a question because you can't unmute yourself on this platform. So just be sure that you're raising your hand so we can go ahead and unmute you. Annie, did you have a question? It looks like you were unmuted for a second.
No, ma'am, I was just checking to see if I could.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to keep scanning for any new hands that have come up.
Oh, Lindsay Vela.
Oh, wonderful. Lindsay, let me make sure I unmute you really quickly. Okay, you can unmute.
Hi there.
Hello.
So
Hi.
I'm a consultant with Region 20 at the Service Center, and I've had 2 different districts reach out about the first grade 20 days window. And as we're talking through that, they're making every effort to make sure that they're going to get everything completed in the first 20 days, but both are slightly nervous about whether everyone will be tested in the first 20 days. Now, I was here last week, and I remember maybe his name is Scott. Okay. And I remember him saying, you do the best that you can. You're making every effort to get that taken care of. I have been apprehensive to share that because I don't see that in writing anywhere. But when I've met with large groups of districts, I have not said that aloud. But when I'm meeting more one-on-one, I'm like, you're doing everything you can. You have a couple stragglers, you get that done. Is that the best message that you would suggest giving as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. To do it the best you can with fidelity. And I talked to someone today from a charter school, and she was saying kids don't have computers, so they haven't even made contact with them. If the student's not attending, then he shouldn't even be registered. I mean, that's part of that too. And so that child's 20 days would start when you can make contact with them. But do the best you can, get done what you can within that 20 days and make a good faith effort, and then finish up when you can. And the TEAMS data, we don't collect any data from first and second grade. You all use data to plan out what action you're going to take with the children, and use formative data. You come together as a committee and say, okay, this kid, are we concerned, or is he, do you think it's the COVID slide, the summer slide? I mean, all those things that you have to take into consideration when you decide what action you want to take. And then you report that action in PEAMS through your choices. And we're not collecting your data. And that is due on December 3rd.
Right. Yes. I shared the calendars. Those were very helpful.
Good.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We know it's really, there are of course going to be logistical issues when this assessment window is rather narrow. So I think another thing to remember is when we share this information, that it isn't just the deadline that we are sharing or the assessment window information, but the intention behind it. And that is, truthfully, some children may have not even been assessed during MOI for some reason, or like the last time they may have been assessed was during the BOI window. And for it to go almost a full year without assessing an incoming first grader, that's a very, very long time. So I think if it were me addressing teachers, I would say, let's really stick to the intention, and it's just to get meaningful data during a really crucial window. And again, we're not collecting this at all. Essentially, you're using that data to inform your early reading indicator code, like Mary said, which is due December 3rd. So it is a case of do the absolute best that you can to collect meaningful data, because we know a lot of children were impacted very differently with COVID. So some were able to not slide as much as others, and we want to know who those kids are and who were the ones who maybe slid a little further than the others.
And I also want to say that when the waiver was given for the kindergarten dyslexia screener, there's concern that some of these kiddos that are at risk for dyslexia might fall through the cracks. So with a good faith effort, we're trying to not let them fall through the cracks. So much to consider. We know how hard it is, but really deliberate and make sure your teachers are collecting formative data, especially when they come back in and get that. But again, we've been out of school a long time, and like Natalie said, students got many different levels of support and learning during this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see any other hands up for right now. And no other questions have come in the chat box. So I will just briefly take us to the data-driven instruction website. That way you guys can see where all of this is. There it is. So all of this information that we give to you is on this website as well. It's either under the requirements, the tool selection guide, or best practices in professional development. So I urge you to send your teachers to the TEA website. Let them get comfortable with navigating this so that you're not always doing it for them. You can certainly help them to interpret this information and know what it means for them individually, but it's a good practice for them to have some self-advocacy skills and say, okay, I need to know my requirements. What other tools are out there so we can make informed decisions, next year or something. And then coming October, we're going to be having some of our best practices and professional development videos listed, and that'll be all about using data to inform instruction in meaningful ways. So let them get comfortable with this website, and they too can absolutely reach out to us and even join these office hours as well. And in the past, when we had, either a short amount or a small amount of people joining, or kind of a lack of questions, we did end early. I'm not going to say that's going to happen today, but our office hours are really dependent, the length of them are dependent on how many questions you have. So, really feel free to chime in. And if there's anything at all that you're unclear about, please do just raise your hand so we can get to you in a timely manner.
Oh, Annie Martin.
Yay. I get so excited when someone raises their hand. Okay. Annie.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear. We're going to use M-Class for our first graders this year for beginning of year, and that's for the diagnostic. But then we're planning to use it again for middle of year, which would cover the dyslexia screening part. And then again for end of the year to show growth. Do I have that right?
Well,
that's correct.
Yeah, you've listed out some best practices in there as well. So what's required on the TEA side is that the literacy assessment for the first 20 days and then the dyslexia screener. However, it really depends on you all, how you decide, your timing of how often to administer outside of those requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you're going to need the end of year for your ERI code as well. Although you can use, if you do it in January, your dyslexia code and your ERI code for the same, use the same instrument, which you will be.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And I see Fernando has a question, so I will unmute you, Fernando, and you can unmute whenever you're ready.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Yes, I was wondering if there's a website or a place where we can look up all the requirements for the dyslexia testing for this year.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So while our website does talk at length about assessments in general, you can also find, if you go to the requirements section, you can find more information on the actual dyslexia requirement, and it has a lot of hyperlinks for you as well to the handbook or any other things that you might need to know that pertain to your question. So, and again, if your question isn't answered through the website, please do email us, and that way we can get to you in a timely way.
The dyslexia handbook has
Okay,
is very.
Sorry, Fernando, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, was there any kind of any changes because of the COVID or any kind of waivers or anything like that we should be aware of?
Well, so in regards to dyslexia, so I'll actually answer the waiver question first. So yes, there is a waiver, and that waiver is for incoming. That's for kindergarten. The waiver is for. Let me get my questions straight first. Fernando, are you which grade would you like to talk about? K1 or 2?
All of them.
All of them. Okay, so there's different guidance for each, which is why I could not figure out where to start in my brain. So for kindergarten, there is a COVID waiver. And that one essentially says if you're going to be using a tool outside of MClass or Textkia, then you need to submit a waiver, and that is due on September 30th. And the waiver information is the screen that I'm sharing now and available through our website. So that's for kindergarten. Now for first grade, this isn't so much of a waiver as it is a rule. So what the governor is asking of us is that we assess incoming first graders with a literacy tool, and those first graders who were not assessed at end of year in kindergarten for dyslexia, that they be assessed with the literacy tool within the first 20 days of schooling. This does not include any days that may have had to been taken out of your calendar due to like a hurricane. So if you close school, that obviously won't count towards those 20 days. So we're really looking at school days here. So we want to ensure that those first graders were assessed, will be assessed within 20 days of your school program starting. And again, those are school days, so weekends don't count, school closures don't count. And again, that is because we want to ensure that no kids slip through the cracks dramatically. And if they did that, we have something to support them. And those are the two big items.
Oh, okay.
This year. Yeah.
And the waiver for kinder, if you want to use a different assessment.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the waiver, if you are not going to use MClass or Textkia for kindergarten, you will need to submit that waiver by September 30th. And that one is also on the website. And you just want to make sure that it is also approved by a local district board of trustees as well.
And it's a 1-year waiver only.
No, we are using MClass.
Oh, good.
Oh, so you're good.
Yeah, you will be fine with the waiver for kindergarten, and MClass is set up and ready to administer assessments remotely if that's what you all are doing. So you should be in pretty good shape. But again, read through the website, and if you have any lingering questions after, please do email us.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's see. I don't see any hands up for now. Yes, I recommend if you know anybody that's new or maybe is moving grades, this is just our website is a really great landing page for just general information about all the requirements, along with some best practices that you all want to support. So we just hope that you're able to make use of it in a really helpful way. Okay. You're welcome. We are happy to provide these sessions for you all. It's sometimes just nice to talk through your questions rather than email back and forth. Okay, so we'll go for, I would say, a few more minutes and wait to see if anyone has any extra questions that come in. And just so you all know, we are going to start to space these out a little bit more. So the next office hours will not be, we think, until the 14th. So again, if you have something burning and on your mind, please let us know now. All right. Well, if there's no further questions, I'm okay with you guys logging off and ending this webinar shortly. We can kind of aim for 3:30 if there's nothing else. Mary and I are happy to stay on just a little bit longer to see if there's any stragglers or anyone who had to join a little bit later. But if you guys are all done with your questions, you're welcome to head out of GoToWebinar and go on with your day. I'm going to add our contact information for you all to see one more time, so you can have that in case anything pops up for you. You are welcome to ask any questions. If you feel like it's a little off topic, that's okay. We may be able to help you there, but if not, we will certainly point you in the right direction or ask that you send your question over to our inbox. But even if you feel like it might be slightly unrelated to this exact topic, feel free to ask, and that way we can point you in the right direction or even give you an answer. And the next office hours, we are looking at September 14th, and we will post that onto our website. So keep an eye out for that. Yes, you may stay on as soon as people head out, and you're welcome to unmute yourself as well to ask your question. Okay, so we'll stay on for about 5 more minutes. And if you have a last question before we go, now is your time to ask. And you can type it or you can just unmute yourself.
Okay, everybody, we have a good day and we'll see you in a week or two.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.